All right, so we have one more part to our profile display, and that's the GitHub component, okay? And how it works is if the user puts in their GitHub username, then it'll show their repos. So first thing we want to do is check to see if they actually have their GitHub username in their profile state before we even attempt to display this. So we'll just go ahead and we'll say profile.github or GitHub username. So if GitHub username, then we want to display profile GitHub. So we'll just go ahead and put that in there. Else, then we'll just say null. All right, now the profile GitHub component needs the username. So we're going to pass in a property of username and set that to profile.GitHub username, and let's save. Now let's go back, and looks like I got logged out. Now if we look at, let's say, Brad's profile, you can see to do profile GitHub. If we go to John's, you don't see that, and the reason for that is because John didn't fill in his GitHub username, so that component isn't even going to display. That's what we want. All right, Brad did though, so what we want to do is hit the GitHub API. Now if you want to be able to make a certain amount of requests to the GitHub API, you have to actually register your application. So I forget the URL. I'm just going to say GitHub register app. Yeah, so register a new OAuth application. So you're going to want to create a name. I'll just say dev connector homepage. I'm going to put HTTP. I don't know if this matters, but I'm just going to put localhost. Description, social network. You can put whatever you want. Callback. Actually, I'm going to put localhost 3000. Callback, I'm going to put the same thing, and let's say register application. Now, once you do that, you'll have a client ID and a client secret. So hold on to that, and then we're going to go back to. Let's go to our profile GitHub component, and in here we're going to bring in link. And we're going to bring in prop types. All right, so we're going to create a constructor here that takes in whatever props, and then we'll call super, pass in those props. All right, and then we're going to create a state for the component. So this dot state. Now everything to do with the GitHub API, I'm not going to use Redux for that because we're not using it anywhere else aside from this component. So we're going to keep everything in this state. I'm going to put the client ID in this state. I'm going to put the client secret. I'm going to put the count of repositories that I want, which is going to be 5. I'm going to put a sort value, which is going to be created and ascending, so basically by the date, and then the repos itself, which will be an array that we fill once we hit that API. All right, so let's get our client secret or client ID. I'm going to delete this, so don't use mine. And let's get the secret. Whoops. I don't want to do that. I want the secret. All right. So we'll go ahead and put that in. All right. Now what we want to do is we want to make our request to the GitHub API. So we want to do that in component did mount. And I'm going to grab the username from the prop that was passed in. So username equals this dot props. We're pulling that out. And then let's pull out some stuff from the state, the component state, which will take the count, sort, client ID, client secret. So that's all going to come from this dot state. All right, now I'm going to use the fetch API to make this request. I'm not going to bring in Axios just for this request. And then we're just going to put some backticks in here, and we're going to hit https api.github.com/users/ and then we want the username. Okay, username is being passed into this component. Then we want /repos, and then we're going to add some parameters. So we want a question mark, and we're going to say per page, per_page, and that's going to be the count. Okay, so we're going to put in the count, and then we want to do and sort equals the sort. Okay, and this is just part of the API. Then we want to put and our client ID. So we want client_ID equals our client ID variable, and we want client_secret equals our client secret variable. All right, so that's our request. Now the fetch API, just like Axios, will give us a promise back, so we got to say .then, except with fetch we get a response and we have to then map it to JSON. So we want to say res.json and then do one more .then, and that'll give us the actual data. And then what we want to do with that is, let's open up a code block, and before we do anything in there, let's just do a catch. Okay, so if there's any error, then we'll just console.log that error. All right, so inside this .then, we want to set our state. We want to say this .set state, and we want to set the repos to the data that's coming in, because that's what we're fetching with this URL, is we're getting the repos and we're putting it in our state. All right, now once we do that, let's go down to render, and let's say const, let's pull out repos from the state, and then what we'll do is create a variable here called repo items, because we want to loop through or map through these. So we're going to say repos.map, and for each one we'll say repo, and then we're going to set that to a div, and for a key we'll go ahead and we'll use the repo.id, which comes from that API. We're also going to add a class of card, card body, and MB-2, margin bottom 2. All right, so each repository is going to be displayed in this div. Then we're going to have a row, and we're going to have a 6-column div, so call MD6. And in this div, we're going to have the repo name. So we're going to do an H4, and then it's going to have a link around it as well. So I'm going to provide link to equals, and then we can get the link from repo.html_URL. Okay, and we'll give this a class name of text-info, and let's give it a target of _blank. And inside here, we're going to put the repo name. Okay, and then right underneath the H4, I'm going to put a paragraph, and I'm going to put the repo description. All right, and all this is available through the GitHub API. So now we want our other 6-column div. So right under here, let's say call -md-6, and in here we want the number of stars, watchers, and forks. So I'm going to put a span here with the class of badge and the class of badge-info, and then a class of mr margin right 1. And then inside here we'll say stars, and we'll set this to repo dot, and it's actually called stargazers underscore count. Alright, and if you can look in the documentation or just make a simple request and see what you get to see all these values. Alright, so that's that. Now let's copy this span and let's paste it in 2 more times. And the second one, I'm going to change it from badge info to badge secondary to make it a different color. And then this is going to be the watchers. Okay, so it's going to be watchers count. And then this last one here is going to be the forks. And this will be forks count. And we're going to change it from badge info to badge success, which will make it green. And we don't need the MR1 because it's the last one. Alright, so now that we have that, we just want to go down to the return here, and we're going to, let's see, let's put an HR. Oops. Just want to put an HR here and then an H3, and let's give this a class of MB4. And in here we're going to say latest user, latest GitHub repos. Okay, and then we can simply put in repo items. Okay, so now let's just put in our prop type. So profile GitHub dot prop types, and we just have one property, and that's the username that was passed in. So we'll set that to prop types dot string dot is required and save. So if we go back to our application, there we go. I just want to check something. Wait a minute, invalid DOM property class. Where did I do that? Where did I put class? Profile about. Yeah, okay, so right here I didn't change these to class name. Let's do that. Alright. There we go. What's this? Prop types is defined but never used. And about, let's see, so about does have a prop of profile, so let's add that right here. So we'll set this to profile prop types dot object is required. Alright, so GitHub looks good. We get the latest 5 repositories. If I click on one, it takes me to that repository. Awesome. If we go to John Doe's profile, he doesn't have a GitHub username associated, so he doesn't have that in his profile. That's exactly what we want. This right here can't call setState on an unmounted component, but it indicates a memory link in your application. Alright, so I believe, let me just try something real quick. I believe if we put a ref attribute on in our GitHub profile, in our GitHub component, if we put a ref attribute here, let's call it my ref, and then up here when we get the response back inside this, then let's just say if this dot refs dot myref, and then just move this into there. All right, I think that might fix it. Let me just, all right, so if we go to Brad's, GitHub, go to John, all right, good. So I don't see that error coming back. All right, cool. So our profiles are now complete. Okay, so we now have that. That's probably the biggest page of this application, and there's quite a few different components that go into it. Now, of course, you could make this all one component, but it would get very messy. That's really that's one of the biggest benefits of React, is to be able to say, you know, this is its own component, this is its own component, this is its own component, and they all can have their own state, they have their own properties, and it just makes things much easier. All right, now one thing that you guys have maybe have even tested already is if you go to profile / let's say test. Okay, test doesn't exist, right? It's not a handle, so it's just kind of hanging. Because loading is still true. So what we can do here, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to create a new component called not found. Okay, so we're going to go into components and say new folder not dash found, and let's create a new file called not found.js. Okay, and then this is just going to be a functional component, and all I'm going to do here is in the div put an h1 with a class of display-4, and we'll say page not found, and we'll say sorry, this page does not exist. Okay, and then what we want to do is create a route for this. So we want to go to app.js, and let's copy one of these routes. We'll just grab the register, and we're going to go down to the bottom here under the last switch, and I'm going to change this to not found, and the component is going to be not found, which we have to bring in. So we'll go up here, and if I'm going too fast, guys, just pause the video, go back, watch it a few times. Let's see, so it's going to be not found / not found. All right, so now if we hit that route of not found, we get this right here. So what we want to do now is go back into our profile component, and let's go up and let's create a lifecycle method, or use the lifecycle method of component will receive props. All right, now of course this takes in next props. Now remember, when we call get profile by handle, if it's not found, we still call get profile, but we return null as the payload. So what we want to do is check for that. So let's say if next props dot profile dot profile is equal to null, not bool, null, and we also want to make sure, we want to say and this dot props dot profile dot loading, if that's true. Okay, if these are true, then let's redirect. Let's say this dot props dot history dot push, let's redirect to not found, like that. All right, so now if we go back and let's check our profiles that do exist, make sure they work. Okay, so now let's go to /test, profile /test, and it brings us to not found. So that's what we want. All right, instead of just hanging with the spinner. So that's it, guys. That's our profile. So that's going to be it for this section. In the next section, we're going to start to work on posts, okay? Because we want an area where developers can create text posts and they can add comments, they can like and unlike. Remember, we created that in our backend API. So we want to get that up and running, and then we're pretty much done. After that, we'll be able to talk about deployment, and we'll be able to push to Heroku and make this a live application. All right, so thanks for staying with me this long, and I will see you in the next section.